It seems that one of the loudest tech projects of the decade, which the world had already buried, is suddenly returning. Several unnamed sources familiar with internal correspondence among Apple's leadership told multiple reputable outlets, including The Information, Nikkei Asia, and analysts from Bloomberg Intelligence, that Apple is seriously preparing to resume work on its long-running project, Apple Car. And the surprising part is not that Apple has once again decided to try itself in the automotive industry, but that the internal arguments for reopening this Pandora's box have become too numerous, and one of them turned out to be decisive: the rapid and frighteningly successful rise of Xiaomi in the electric vehicle market. When Cupertino saw the numbers, real, commercial, verifiable results of the Chinese tech giant, the company formed a clear understanding: if Apple once again ignores the trend and refuses to enter the market now, then in the next 10 years it risks becoming a supplier of accessories for those who create the future. Over the past 1.5 years, Xiaomi has turned its automotive division into one of the boldest and fastest-growing forces in the new global auto market. It all began with the high-profile launch of the SU7, the company's first full-fledged electric sedan, which Chinese media called a Tesla Model 3 killer even before the car went on sale. But the effect went far deeper than loud headlines. SU7 became a viral product, instantly capturing the attention of users, investors, and the press. According to Caixin, more than 100,000 pre-orders were collected within the first 24 hours after the presentation, and by the end of the second month, total orders exceeded 320,000 units, setting an absolute record for any first-generation Chinese EV. But the real sensation is the financial performance. According to analysts at Goldman Sachs China division, in just the first half of the year, Xiaomi earned more than $4.5 billion from its automotive division, and most of that came from the SU7 and its senior version SU7 Max, a high-speed modification that accelerates to 100 km per hour in seconds, and in some tests, outperforms early series Porsche Taycan. SU7 became not just a car, but proof that a modern tech company can build vehicles on the level of global automotive giants, faster, cheaper, more flexibly, and at a far more aggressive pace. It was precisely Xiaomi's success that became a warning signal Apple could not ignore. When a Chinese company once dismissed as a phone copycat suddenly broke into the most demanding and complex industry in the world and began pushing competitors out of their own field, red lights went on in Cupertino. According to Bloomberg, Apple's top managers were forced to hold a separate series of closed-door meetings to assess the scale of the threat. And the conclusion was harsh. If Apple does not appear in the automotive market, then in a few years, the title of #1 consumer electronics company will go to other players. Inside the company, a heavy period of stagnation has long been felt. No revolutionary products after AirPods, the smartphone market hitting a ceiling, and brand fans increasingly demanding not another speaker moved 3 millimeters to the side, but a real future. Big, bold, ambitious. And now, according to insiders, Apple is ready to deliver that future. The Apple Car project, frozen amid internal disagreements, staffing reshuffles, and the loss of several key engineers, has finally received the green light. The internal name of the project remains secret, but sources from The Information report that Apple plans to completely reform the team, bring back former specialists, attract those who previously worked on Tesla's autopilot, and expand the staff by several thousand people. One of the sources claims that the atmosphere inside Apple now resembles the early days of the first iPhone's development, a mix of panic, enthusiasm, and the realization that the company can no longer afford a mistake. However, even if Apple returns to the project in early 2026, a fully mass-produced car will appear only several years later, and this is the key strategic miscalculation that many experts already call the loss of the most valuable resource: time. While Tesla, Xiaomi, BYD, NIO, and dozens of other companies have already built factories, logistics, service networks, their own battery technologies, and established autonomous driving architectures, Apple is only preparing to take a seat at the table. It arrived at 5 or even 10 years too late. But there is one important detail: Apple remains Apple. The company knows how to arrive late, but always with a bang. Just like it entered the smartphone market, where Nokia, Motorola, and BlackBerry already dominated, but crushed them with a single product. Just like it entered the headphone market and displaced dozens of brands. And in Cupertino, they still believe they can repeat this trick. Insiders note that the new Apple car will no longer be aimed at full Level 5 autonomy, as previously envisioned. After a series of failures related to software, Apple decided to abandon the Level 5 concept and focus on something more realistic: a smart, autonomous, but not fully self-driving car. According to Nikkei Asia, Apple is considering a modular electric motor architecture, a two-tier autopilot system based on Apple Silicon, and integration with future generations of Vision Pro and Vision Air. In other words, Apple Car may become not just a vehicle, but a part of an ecosystem in which the car is an extension of the iPhone and an integral part of the user's digital life. And this is already potentially dangerous for competitors who cannot create such deep integration. Meanwhile, Xiaomi continues to pressure the market from all sides. SU7 became the beginning of a new lineup. SUVs, sports versions, and models with expanded autonomous fleet control are already being tested, capable of integrating into the smart city infrastructure of China. And this fact, as the Wall Street Journal notes, has become another irritant for Apple, because the Chinese are now one step ahead even in areas that just a few years ago were considered the domain of Western tech companies. Nevertheless, despite all the difficulties, delays, and the lack of its own manufacturing lines, Apple appears to have made its choice. The company can no longer afford to stand aside and watch others divide a billion-dollar market that 10 years ago seemed too risky. Yes, Apple lost time, lost part of its team, lost its technological edge, but as Morgan Stanley experts note, the electric vehicle market is still in the early stages of formation, and a company with such capital, such reputation, and such a fan base still has a chance to change the game. And now, as the first leaks appear, as the press hints at meetings between Tim Cook and the heads of several major auto component giants, as analysts begin revising their Apple forecasts for 2026 to 2030, it becomes clear. It looks like Apple is returning to the automotive business, not for innovation, not for experimentation, but for survival and for the attempt to reclaim the status of the world's leading tech force. The company stayed in the shadows for too long, postponed the inevitable for too long, and now, inspired by Xiaomi's success, alarmed by its scale, and realizing that the window of opportunity is closing rapidly, Apple is doing what it should have done long ago, preparing to enter the fight. And perhaps this fight will become its loudest comeback in the last 20 years.